All right, good deal. It's Sheriff Heath Taylor, Russell County Sheriff's Office, approaching 40 years in law enforcement. And so I'll just start out with the execution of Jeremy Williams being imminent. What are your thoughts that you could share with us right now?
You know, he hurt a lot of people and got by with it for a long time. When this case happened and we got involved with investigating this case, it really opened up a whole bunch of cases from years and years past that he had gotten away with, been found not guilty of. I mean, there was just a plethora of things that started really coming out. And, you know, we were able to speak to some of those people in the past. We couldn't find all of them. But, you know, I think this is bringing closure to a lot of people for a lot of things that, you know, he had done to them, whether or not it was sexual abuse or the killing of the child in Alaska that he had gotten away with, up until this incident as well. So, you know, when we talk about the closure for the people who he has hurt for so many years, you know, I think that's going to be part of the healing process. And I know that sounds crazy to think that the death of one person can heal, but I think it's closure. And I think the victims of people who do these types of crimes have to have closure. And I think this is part of it.
You mentioned the Alaska case, and I think there's people here in this area that maybe don't have an education about what he's been convicted for here in Phoenix City.
Right.
But then also there's that other case that you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we have the case here where he, you know, kidnaps, brings across the state line, tortures, sexually abuses, and murders a little 5-year-old. But there was also a case in Alaska, you know, 15, 20 years ago where, you know, he killed a 6-month-old child, and basically he's been indicted for it now upon the confession of it to us, but he had gotten away with that as some type of SIDS case with the child out there. They didn't have enough to charge him in Alaska with that crime. And so, you know, he's gotten away with it for this long.
You talk about the confession. Did he do that early on? Did he try to deny his crimes?
No, yeah. He didn't originally just want to tell us the truth and tell us what happened. No, it was a process that he, you know, I think he sat in jail and realized where he was and his surroundings, and he reached out to one of my investigators and, you know, wanted to talk to them after trying to talk to him for hours on end. And of course, he didn't want nothing to do with it.
Is his confession and subsequent expediting of the process here, would you say this is a noble act by Jeremy Williams to push this up like this?
You know, there's a lot of conjecture about why he's doing what he's doing. A lot of people have asked me, do I think he's trying to, you know, honorably take leave because of what he's done type thing? And I just don't know that I can get there. I have a little bit of a different opinion about why he's doing what he's doing. I think he knows that if he didn't take this route, the length of time it would take if he went through the appeal process, the time he would spend in prison, the target that was on his head in prison because of the crimes he committed against children. I personally feel that's more of why he's taken this route, so that he saves himself from whatever, happens in a prison system with somebody who is facing the charges that he's facing. And maybe that's a harsh reality for some people, but at the end of the day, I think it's pretty well known that I don't think anybody allows that type of behavior, but in a prison setting, it's tough to protect everybody. It was tough on us the 3 or 4 years he was in our facility. It was extremely difficult for us to, keep him protected the entire time that he was in our facility. So, I think a reality is that he's doing this to save himself more so than to do it for somebody else. That's just my personal opinion.
So I didn't have this in my notes, but since you brought it up, I'll ask the question. That theory is true then, about that child predators are treated a certain type of way.
I think
prison.
it's absolutely true that if the inmates can get to them, they have a tendency to treat them differently, and whether they beat them up or whatever it is they do. I definitely think that there's a code in there that child predators don't do well in prison, and they have to keep them separate. And I think Jeremy Williams knows that, and I think he would rather take the easy way out in a shortcut scenario than the years of having to be protected in that prison system, is my guess. Whatever would happen to him. I just think he don't want to face that versus facing the death penalty.
In your 4 decades of law enforcement work, have you seen a case where the conviction and execution have been so close together in time like this?
Never. I have 4 or 5 death cases that are sitting on death row today that occurred 20 years before his case. None of them have been put to death yet. They're all still sitting and waiting the execution on death row, appeal after appeal after appeal. So no, this is extremely unusual.
It is interesting because a lot of folks like us in the media, and then of course in law enforcement with investigators, and as well, you see sometimes the crimes happen and the justice system take over, but then the capital punishment that follows. I mean, careers come and go, and so it's interesting, right, to see one
Absolutely.
like this,
Absolutely,
start to finish like that. Let me ask you about the emotional weight of this case, and how would you describe that from the law enforcement side? Your people went through a lot.
Yeah, I mean, investigators are no different than anybody else. I mean, they're they see and have emotions and have feelings like everybody else. This case was extremely difficult for my investigators because historically, we investigate things that we see the result of. We see a homicide, we see the body, those types of things. This particular case caught my investigators off guard in the sense of, we had a search warrant for the phone, and we were looking for conversation between him and the mother. And in that search, my investigators didn't dream that they would come across the actual video of the crime in action. And so they were extremely caught off guard, and emotionally and mentally distraught with seeing what they witnessed. And that's unusual to have to actually see the act in action, caught on video. And so there was a time where, in the middle of all that, that I, sent some folks home to, have some downtime and to gather themselves. We have since had counseling with, all of my investigators that needed it during that time frame. So, the fact that we're in law enforcement and we do this for a living doesn't mean that it doesn't connect. It doesn't mean that it doesn't affect us. During this whole case, I mean, I have a daughter, and when this thing first happened, I mean, you just think about your own child, and at that age, and having to go through and endure such a travesty that they don't deserve, and it just hits home in more ways than people realize. I think on the street.
It was right there at Christmas time too, and just a lot of uh, folks in maybe thinking about holidays and that sort of thing, and it was very heavy. And I was going to ask you that about what you did for investigators. Did they go to counseling? But
oh yeah, we sent them to counseling. We sent them to. I had to have them, take some time off and regather their thoughts and what their purpose and their mission is to bring justice for her, for our victim and her family. And I guess kind of not lost in this case is the mother. um, we didn't have the ability to give her, in my opinion, a proper sentence just because of how things played out. Um, she got what we could for the sex trafficking and that type of thing, but she was complicit in this death. And she'll get out in 20 or so years. Maybe somebody else prosecutes her that has jurisdiction over her between now and then, who knows? But it's unfortunate that we wasn't able to charge her. I don't think she knew necessarily that the death was going to occur. I think it was a sex trafficking, and she knew that part, but she didn't know necessarily that the death was going to occur, and that's why we couldn't tie her to it.
And the trafficking part, bad enough.
Sure.
5-year-old child.
Absolutely. I mean, that's incredible by itself. But that was the reasoning why we couldn't, charge her with the homicide side of it. So
I want to ask you about Kamari's father too. He's also caught a little bit of a legal hurdle with this as well, and won't be present for the execution because of that. That he violated a custody order by allowing Kamari to go to her mother's house. I just want to get your thoughts on that angle here too.
I haven't been as directly involved with that side of it since then. My understanding is just simply that he was given several orders by the court to not allow the mother to have custody. And during the holiday season, he thought that it would be okay, is my understanding. And of course, what happened, and the court system chose to, hold him in contempt or whatever that they have charged him with since then. And I totally understand that. I think it's a travesty on both sides. So I think he had more than one opportunity to be told by the court. There were multiple opportunities, my understanding, that the court had said to him, you can't let her have custody or have visitation or have the possession of the child. And he violated that order apparently on more than one occasion. And this last time, is a result of what we have here. And so I as much as I hate it, I understand it from the court's perspective.
For people who are learning about this case now, there's so many layers, and there's so many just brutally shocking things that happen here. I mean, it starts with the possible uh, point that the child may have been kidnapped, and then the details kept unfolding, and you just learn more, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. What do you want people to know about Jeremy Williams that are learning about this case right now as he's facing capital punishment?
And I think the public should understand that he was a child predator. We uncovered multiple children that he has abused over the last, 10 years, 15 years. Some of them we were able to contact, and some we were not. Some didn't want to have anything to do with it, and some did. And so, I think the public, we're ridding the community of a child predator, whether he, stayed in prison for the rest of his life and never got out and died in prison, or whether he is actually put to death like he's been asking for. Either way, I think the community is in a better spot, because it's one less person that is out there trying to, harm our children on both sides of our community, on both sides of the river. This didn't just occur in Columbus and Phoenix City. This went all the way to Alaska and multiple states in between. He left victims everywhere he traveled.
I've asked you about Williams. We talked about Sipple. Folks that are learning about the case learned about them. What do you want people to know about 5-year-old Kamari Holland today?
I still see her smile when we talk about this case. I didn't know her personally prior to this. Everybody that we've spoke with just talked about how she was a bundle of joy, how she was constantly making people laugh and had such a great attitude and a great outlook on life, even given the hurdles that she had been dealt at such an early age, with her parents and the situation with the custody and all of that she had been through. And so, I think the community just needs to remember that little girl, through trial and tribulation, still had the greatest attitude from all accounts that anybody could have. She didn't have an easy 5 years of life, and certainly she didn't have an ending to life that was easy. And that's what I hope the community takes away from this, is that we're remembering her, and we're bringing closure for her and for her friends and family that were close to her.
That's all I got for you. Is there anything else you want to add to this?
You know, it's different that we're, you know, the state is taking someone's life. And I can respect that and I understand that. But I also feel like that, you know, again, you're talking about a person who preyed on children for many, many years that got away with it. And eventually it caught up to him and he progressed and progressed and progressed in that. And so eventually he you know, committed a crime like this. And I think that, you know, we have to understand that that's the justice system. And whether or not you're a proponent of the death penalty or not, whether or not he, you know, should have served life in prison and never had the opportunity to get out again, that's not really up to me to debate. I mean, we work within the system we have, and you know, Jeremy has asked for this day to come, and so, you know, we're gonna be here over the next couple of days, and it's gonna bring closure to this case for a lot of people.
Thanks for your time today, Sheriff.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.